this tutorial is going to cover how to do a traditional provisional cast on. You're going to need a few things to do this. You're going to need the yarn you're actually making your project out of. That's what this yellow is going to be. You're going to need a second yarn to do your provisional cast on. You want it to be similar to your first yarn, but preferably a different color so it's easy to see, and you do not want it to be fuzzy or nubby, as it will be very difficult to remove later on, and you do need to remove your provisional cast on stitch later on. You need your knitting needles. You can do this in rows or you can do this in the round, but the actual cast on section is done the same regardless if you're working in rows or in the round. So there's my 2 needles, and then of course you need your crochet hook. I prefer to use a crochet hook that's a couple sizes larger than my knitting needles. You probably can't see this, but this knitting needle is 4.5 millimeters and this crochet hook is 6 millimeters. That way I know that my provisional cast on stitches are not too tight. I'm going to work on the assumption that you already know how to make a chain, with a crochet hook, how to knit, and how to purl. If you don't know how to do those things, go find yourself a tutorial, learn how to do them, and then come back. Alright? So, provisional cast on. This is the traditional version. We start off with a chain. You need to know how many stitches you're supposed to be casting on. In this case, we're going to say 10. You want to add a couple extra stitches, a couple extra chain stitches at the beginning and the end of your cast on. I do this just because it's easier to not have to work all the way to the edge. Excuse me. And in case I miscount, it's not a big deal. I have a little extra to work with. So, we're casting on 10 for this particular project, which means I'm going to crochet 14 for 2 extra on either side of my cast on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then I'm going to pull that loop, clip your yarn, very loosely tie a little knot. You don't want that to be too tight because you're going to need to take this all out later. Now let's look at the anatomy of the chain stitch. You can see this is what's called the front of your chain stitch, and it makes little V's. Okay, these V's point down towards the bottom, towards the beginning of your chain. You see how there's a V and a V and a V? They point down to the beginning. This is the front of your chain. The back of your chain has these little ridges on it. Okay. These ridges are what we actually use for our provisional cast on. So you want to take the start of your chain. Again, the V's point towards the start of your chain. You want to turn your chain upside down so you're looking at the ridges. And we're now going to work into these ridges from back to front. Take your knitting needle and insert it from back to front into each ridge. We gave ourselves a couple extra on the end here. So we're going 1 from back to front. 2. Just keep going into these ridges. 3. It's very important that you do not split your yarn. 3, because it'll become very difficult to remove your provisional cast on later. Back to front. 4. Back to front into the ridge. 5. 6. 7. Working on those ridges, working back to front. 8. 9. 10. There you have your provisional cast on onto your needle, all 10 of your stitches. Okay, and they are in the direction that is needed to start knitting. So I'm actually going to do the first couple rows here with you just to show you how I get all of this done. We start off just with a knit row. Okay, just like you're knitting anything else. I just pinch the end of my fingers. I don't tie the end here. I'll show you where I tie it later. and you're just going to knit a row. Right. Now, as we're working in rows here and not in rounds, we're going to purl the next row. However, if you were working in a round, you would do all of this on your circular needles or on your double point needles, and then all you would do for the next row is just keep going, just continue right on through, right around, okay? Nothing fancy. This is the point where it's connected. It's not connected with the chain. It's connected with the first row. Okay. Since we're going in rows, we're going to flip and work a purl row. When I work in rows, I always slip my first stitch. So purl all the way across. Okay. Now you see how this last stitch is really loose because it's not connected to anything? This is where I fix that. And this is just how I do it. I find that it works well for me. There are various other techniques. You do what works well for you. Some people just leave it and then weave it in at the end. What I like to do is wrap it around here and pull through. Basically, I'm making myself a little slip knot around my working yarn. And at the end, when your weaving ends in, you might want to undo that slip knot so that it's a little neater, which is what I normally do. All this slip knot is doing for me right now is assuring that this end is not going to cause me to have a run in my work before I've even finished making my garment. This is just a little stability thing that I like to do. I'm sure there are lots of other techniques. This is just the one that I use. So now that I've done that, I'm going to continue my work. This is a knit row, so I slip one knitwise, and I just keep knitting. Right. And that is the provisional cast on. You will see links under this video for other techniques that relate to this, and also a video for how to take your provisional cast on and move it onto another needle. Lots of other tips and tricks and techniques and all sorts of fun stuff here at JessieAtHome.com.